Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. Die or speak. The command cracked like a whip across the silent bedroom. I stared up from the silk sheets, heart hammering against my ribs, paralyzed not by the obsidian dagger pressed against my throat, but by the cold, devastating familiarity in the eyes of the monster holding it. My breath hitched, a jagged sound in the opulent quiet of the chamber. The man looming over me was a masterpiece of terrifying beauty. Raven hair falling over eyes the color of coagulated blood, broad shoulders encased in a black military shirt unbuttoned enough to reveal the scar of a bite mark on his collarbone. He looked like a god of war who had descended solely to torment me. The problem was, I had no idea who he was, nor did I know who I was. But he looked at me not with the confusion of a stranger, but with the ravenous, terrifying possessiveness of a predator finally cornered with its prey. "Well?" he whispered, the steel blade grazing the sensitive skin over my pulse. "Did the conditioning stick this time? Or are you just playing coy, little liar?" I swallowed hard, feeling the cold metal slide against my Adam's apple. My mind was a blank slate, a white room with no doors. I remembered nothing before opening my eyes 10 seconds ago. I don't know you," I rasped, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. The man's lips curled into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. It was the smile of a psycho. "You don't know me?" He chuckled, a dark, low rumble that vibrated through the mattress and into my spine. "You are in the Grand Duchy of Valerian. You are lying in the bed of Duke Calen Thorn, the man known across 3 continents as the Butcher of the North. And you?" He leaned down, his nose brushing against mine, inhaling my scent deeply. "Are my fiancé." My eyes widened. "Engaged? To this lunatic?" "You're lying," I whispered. Calen pulled back, flipping the dagger in his hand with terrifying dexterity before driving it into the headboard, mere inches from my ear. The wood splintered with a loud crack. "I never lie to you, Julian. That's your department." He stood up, towering over the bed, his presence filling the room with a suffocating pressure. It was a physical weight, an aura of dominance that labeled him clearly as a prime alpha. My body reacted instinctively, shrinking back, a biological response to a predator that my mind couldn't comprehend. "Get dressed," Calen ordered, turning his back on me as if he didn't fear I might grab the dagger and stab him. "We have a breakfast engagement with the Imperial envoys. If you make a mistake, I'll kill them. If you try to run, I'll kill the guards who let you pass. If you cry, I might just kiss you." He glanced over his shoulder, his red eyes glowing with a manic light. "Don't keep me waiting, darling." The bathroom was a palace in itself, lined with black marble and gold fixtures. I stared at the reflection in the mirror. The face was mine, yet it felt like a costume. Silver hair that reached my nape, pale skin that looked like it hadn't seen the sun in months, and eyes of startling, icy blue. I looked fragile, breakable, but when I gripped the edge of the sink, the marble cracked under my fingers. I pulled my hand back, staring at the spiderweb fracture in the stone. I looked at my hands. They were calloused, not like a pampered aristocrat, but like someone who handled weapons. "Who am I?" The door clicked open. I spun around, adrenaline flooding my system. 2 servants entered. Their heads bowed so low their noses almost touched the floor. They carried clothes of velvet and silk. They were terrified. I could smell the sour stench of their fear. "Lord Julian," one whispered, trembling. "His Grace grows impatient." I allowed them to dress me, my mind racing. Calen Thorn. The name sparked a dull ache in the back of my skull, a phantom pain. If I was his fiancée, why did I wake up terrified? And what did he mean by conditioning? I walked out into the main chamber. Calen was waiting, leaning against the doorframe. He wore a formal military coat now, heavy with metals that chimed softly as he moved. He offered me his arm. "You look exquisite," he said, his voice dropping an octave. "Like a pristine blade before the first cut." I hesitated, then took his arm. His muscles were hard as iron beneath the fabric. Kalen. I tested the name. His grip on my arm tightened bruisingly. Yes. Why do I have no memory? He began walking us down the corridor, the sound of his boots echoing like gunshots. Because you wanted to forget. That doesn't make sense. It does to a coward. He shot back, his tone venomous. Then, abruptly, his mood shifted. He pulled me closer, his hand sliding down to rest possessively on my lower back. Or perhaps you just wanted to see if I would chase you into the dark. You always did enjoy our games. Games? I asked, struggling to keep up with his long strides. Cat and mouse. Hunter and prey. Assassin and target. I stopped dead in the middle of the hallway. Assassin. Kalen stopped too. He turned to me, and for a second, the madness in his eyes receded, replaced by a profound, agonizing sorrow that vanished as quickly as it appeared. He reached out, his gloved thumb tracing my lower lip. Don't worry your pretty head about the past, Julian. You're an amnesiac noble now. A delicate flower. Just act the part. The breakfast hall was a cavernous room with a vaulted ceiling painted with scenes of war. At the far end sat a long table. 3 men and a woman sat there, dressed in the finery of the imperial court. When Kalen entered, the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. They stood up hastily. Your Grace, the lead envoy stammered. We didn't expect me to bring my betrothed? Kalen cut in, guiding me to the chair at his right hand. He didn't pull it out for me. He simply shoved me gently toward it. Sit. I sat. The envoys stared at me with open curiosity and a hint of disdain. This is Julian Vane? The woman asked, raising an eyebrow. The rumored recluse? He looks rather piqued. Kalen sat at the head of the table, leaning back and propping his boots up on the empty chair beside the woman. It was a gross display of disrespect. He's recovering. It's exhausting being loved by me. I choked on the water I had just sipped. Kalen smirked, patting my back with a force that felt more like a strike. Lord Vane, the lead envoy said, ignoring Kalen's behavior. The Emperor is concerned about the rumors regarding your origins. There are no records of a House Vane in the peerage. My hand tightened on the silverware. Origins. I didn't have an answer. I looked at Kalen. Kalen was slicing a piece of rare steak, blood pooling on the porcelain. Julian is from the Outer Rim, Kalen lied smoothly. His family was purged during the rebellion. I found him in the ruins. A refugee? The woman scoffed. And you intend to make a refugee the Duchess? Kalen stopped cutting. The knife screeched against the plate. The sound was excruciating. Silence descended on the room like a shroud. I intend, Kalen said softly, not looking up from his steak, to make him whatever I please. And if you question my judgment again, Lady Mara, I will have your tongue served for lunch. He looked up then. His eyes were glowing a vibrant, toxic crimson. The alpha pheromones rolled off him in a crushing wave. The envoys gasped, clutching their throats. It was suffocating, a heavy scent of burnt wood and ozone. I felt it too, the pressure, but it didn't crush me. Instead, it felt familiar, comforting even, like a heavy blanket on a cold night. Kalen's gaze flicked to me. He saw that I wasn't cowering. A spark of interest lit up his face. Eat, Julian, he commanded softly. You hate it when your food gets cold. I looked down at the plate. Without thinking, I reached for the salt shaker, then hesitated, moving my hand to the pepper instead. Ah, Kalen murmured. Muscle memory. You always did like things spicy. It covers the taste of poison, you used to say. Did I? I whispered. Every time you tried to poison me. Yes. The envoys were trembling too much to eat. Picked up my fork and took a bite. The meat was tender, rich. As I chewed, a flash of an image hit me. A dark alley, rain slicking the cobblestones, a knife in my hand, and Kalen pinning me against a brick wall, his hand around my throat, grinning as blood ran down his cheek. Asterisk, is that the best you can do, little bird? Asterisk, I dropped the fork. Clattered loudly. Headache? Kalen asked, his voice devoid of sympathy. I remember. Rain. I stammered. It rains a lot in this country, he dismissed. He stood up abruptly. Get out. The envoys didn't need to be told twice. They scrambled over themselves to leave the hall. Once we were alone, Kalen turned to me. The playfulness was gone. He looked tired. Dangerous. Why are you doing this? I asked, standing up to face him. Who am I really? Kalen walked around the table until he stood directly in front of me. He grabbed my chin, forcing me to look up at him. You are a weapon, Julian. A sleeper agent sent by the Imperial Crown, the very people who just sat here, to assassinate me 3 years ago. My blood ran cold. What? You failed? Kalen whispered, his thumb rubbing harshly over my lip, over and over again. And somewhere between your first attempt and your 50th, you made a mistake. I got caught. No. Kalen's eyes searched mine, looking for something deep inside. You fell in love. And because you are a stubborn, broken thing, you couldn't reconcile your mission with your heart. So you used an experimental chemical from your handlers to wipe your slate clean. You tried to erase me. He released my chin with a shove. But I don't let things go, Julian. Kept you. I told the world you were mine. And I waited for the chemical to wear off. And if it doesn't? I asked, my voice trembling. Kalen smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression I had ever seen. It was filled with a dark, twisted devotion. Then I will break you all over again until the pieces fit. The days that followed were a blur of tension and luxury. I was a prisoner in a gilded cage. I explored the estate, trying to find an escape route, but the guards were everywhere. Yet they didn't stop me. They watched me with wary respect. Kalen was mercurial. One moment he was bringing me rare books, reading poetry with a voice like velvet. The next, he was dragging me to the training grounds, forcing me to watch his soldiers spar. His eyes fixed on my hands, waiting for them to twitch. He wanted the killer back. He wanted the man who tried to murder him. It was sick. It was twisted. And yet, every time he entered the room, my body hummed. When he touched me, a hand on the small of my back, a brush of shoulders, electricity arced through my nerves. The breaking point came a week later. The estate was hosting a grand ball. Kalen insisted. To show off my prize, he had said, fastening a diamond choker around my neck. Covered the scent gland I didn't know I had. You're an Omega? I had asked, touching the cold gems. No, Kalen had laughed. You are. A recessive one. But lethal. The ballroom was a sea of colors and masks. The music was loud. The chatter deafening. I felt dizzy. Kalen kept me close, his arm a steel band around my waist. He drank wine like water, his eyes scanning the crowd with predatory intent. Dance with me, he ordered, dragging me onto the floor. He moved with surprising grace for a man of his size. We spun, the world blurring around us. Do you remember this waltz? He murmured in my ear. We danced to this in the capital, right before you pulled a garrote wire from your sleeve. Stop it, I hissed. Stop trying to make me a monster. You are a monster, Julian. He spun me hard, pulling me flush against his chest. That's why we fit. The world is full of sheep. You and I, we are the wolves. Suddenly, the lights flickered. A crash of glass shattered the music. Screams erupted. Men in black gear descended from the balconies on ropes. Assassins. Real ones. Finally, Kalen grinned. He pushed me away. Stay there, darling. Watch how it's done. He drew a sword from nowhere. A blade of pure energy and charged. It was a massacre. Kalen moved like a blur. A whirlwind of violence. He laughed as he fought, cutting down assailants with brutal efficiency. But there were too many of them. They were swarming. I stood frozen near a pillar. My heart was pounding, but not with fear. With anticipation. My eyes tracked the movements of the assassins. I saw the patterns. I saw the openings. *3 on the left. 2 on the balcony with rifles. 1 sneaking behind Kalen. Behind you! I screamed. Kalen turned, parrying a blow, but the assassin kicked him back. Another lunged. My body moved before my mind gave permission. I snatched a champagne flute from a passing waiter's tray, smashed the stem, and sprinted. I didn't run like a noble. I ran low, silent. I slid across the polished floor, coming up behind the assassin targeting Kalen's exposed back. With a fluid motion that felt as natural as breathing, I drove the jagged glass into the assassin's neck. He gurgled and fell. I didn't stop. I grabbed his fallen pistol. I spun, aiming at the balcony. Bang. Bang. 2 bodies fell from the rafters. The ballroom went silent. The remaining assassins hesitated, staring at me. I stood there, panting, blood on my white suit, a gun in my hand. The recoil felt like a handshake from an old friend. The smell of gunpowder cleared my head like smelling salts. Memories crashed into me. The training facility. The cold nights. The mission. Kill Duke Thorn. The infiltration. The failed attempts. The way he would catch my wrist and smile. The way we kissed in the rain while I held a knife to his ribs. The realization that I couldn't kill him because he was the only person who saw me. I looked up. Kalen was standing amidst a pile of bodies. He wasn't looking at the enemies. He was looking at me. He was panting, blood splattered across his face. And he was smiling. A genuine, ecstatic smile. There you are, he breathed. One last assassin, foolishly brave, lunged at me. I didn't even look. I sidestepped, grabbed his arm, snapped the elbow, and put a bullet in his knee. He collapsed, screaming. I looked at the gun in my hand. Then I looked at Kalen. You knew, I said, my voice steady cold. The voice of Julian Vane, the ghost of the Empire. You knew they would attack tonight. Kalen stepped over a corpse, walking toward me. The crowd parted for him in terror. I invited them. I leaked the security codes. Why? To wake you up. He stopped in front of me, ignoring the gun I still had pointed vaguely in his direction. He reached out, his bloody hand cupping my clean cheek. I missed you, Julian. You're a psychopath, I whispered, but I didn't pull away. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a burning heat. My bond with him, the connection I had tried to sever, was roaring to life. And you're a killer, he countered, leaning his forehead against mine. My killer. I looked into his red eyes. I remembered everything. I remembered the nights we spent hunting each other, and the nights we spent in his bed, tending to the wounds we gave one another. I remembered erasing my mind because the Emperor had ordered me to detonate a suicide vest at Kalen's next public appearance. I chose oblivion over his death. I tried to save you, I said, my voice cracking. I don't need saving, Kalen growled, his hand sliding down to grip the hand holding the gun, moving it until the barrel pressed against his own heart. I need you. Pull the trigger if you want to leave, Julian. Finish the mission. But if you lower this gun, you are mine. Forever. No more running. No more forgetting. The ballroom held its breath. The Psycho Alpha and his assassin fiancé. I felt the steady beat of his heart against the barrel. I looked at the man who had burned down half the world just to find me in the ashes of my own mind. The mission is compromised, I murmured. I clicked the safety on. I dropped the gun. It hit the floor with a heavy thud. Kalen let out a shuddering breath, a sound of pure relief. He wrapped his arms around me, lifting me off my feet, burying his face in my neck. He bit down on the scent gland, claiming me in front of the wreckage and the witnesses. Welcome home, he growled against my skin. I wrapped my arms around his shoulders, my blood-stained hands tangling in his dark hair. The nightmare wasn't over. We were the nightmare, and I was finally awake. And that is how the sleeping agent woke up in the arms of the devil. If you enjoyed seeing Kalen's obsession finally pay off, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, Would you forgive a lover who put you in mortal danger just to help you remember who you are? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then,